Choo Choo Charles is a story about a monstrous ancient being who has been terrorizing old lost civilizations, who has the ability to fuse with other items to become deadlier. This entity has been sealed off in collapsed caverns long ago until very recently, when a greedy miner by the name of Warren Charles arrives in the island, intending to excavate and extract its resources, hiding the discovery of Charles so that he can benefit from the value of these dangerous resources. Hi folks, I'm R, your narrator, and welcome to Choo Choo Charles. Thanks to 2-Star Games for providing me a pre-release copy of this game so I could play it early on and make a video out of it. Keep in mind that this video will have spoilers, and with that said, let's begin. Eugene, being in mainland, is speaking to someone on a public phone, convincing him to come to his island, called Aranerum, where a monstrous train spider known as Charles roams and torments its residents. The person on the phone is an archivist who is looking for the next big thing to keep their museum up and running, which seems to be on the brink of closure. After meeting at the docks, Eugene takes the protagonist to the island, where he explains that his friends alongside his son are trapped in this island, people who have been working hard in order to battle this demonic entity and defeat it. Arriving at the island, Eugene explains how a train operator was killed by Charles not too long ago, providing an opportunity for the brave newcomer to use his train in order to fast travel between each location within this cursed island. As Eugene tries to get to another location, he's seen sprinting with all of his might, depicting how no one is safe within this island, with Charles potentially lurking in any corner of the land, posing a high risk to make the shortest trips in this place. Reaching the train shed, Eugene inspects the train and gets on it with the archivist in order to take it for a test ride, when unexpectedly Charles attacks them, with Eugene falling off and being brutally battered by it, slowly losing his life, taking his last breaths.
This isn't how things were supposed to end. I thought we could still fight like the old days. Yes, sir. Easy in, easy out. You don't need to do more than I thought, but I don't have time to explain. Find the eggs. Find my son.
Just as Eugene is about to die, he mentions how the protagonist needs more time to get ready and instructs him to find his son and mysterious items that he refers to as eggs. With not much information at hand, the archivist gets in the train and explores the island in order to meet more people and find out how to take down this horrifying demonic entity. Throughout the map, the protagonist can come across many helpful NPCs who assist the protagonist, as they have heard from Eugene he's the archivist who is here to hunt their monster for them. On the other hand, some other NPCs task the protagonist with some errands, who in return pay him with scrap parts which can be used in replenishing the train's health, upgrading it by fortifying its armor, increasing its weapon damage and speed.
I need my pickles! I ate the last jar of pickles I had in my house, and there's only one jar of pickles left on the island!
The protagonist can also obtain 4 weapons after completing some missions, one being a turret gun called the Railer, the rocket launcher called the Boomer, the armor piercer known as Bob, which has a very interesting story behind it, and the flamethrower known as Bug Spray. Meeting one of the island locals called Daryl, he explains how one of Warren's goons dropped a locked case in his backyard some time ago. Through meeting more people and reading scattered letters, we learn Warren is the mine owner of the island who invested in mining Aranerum, despite it being a horrible decision with minimum return. Or at least that's what it showed on the surface. Many of his loyal followers start wearing masks in shape of Charles, the monstrous train, as if being his loyal servants and subjects, worshipping this monstrous entity. Managing to lockpick the box, an ancient tablet is found with a giant monstrous spider being surrounded by stick figures holding spears, as if trying to kill it, depicting how entities like Charles must have existed long before him in this island, possibly thousands of years ago, with time trapping these entities underground. However, with the rich investor Warren Charles arriving in the island and commencing mining work, he possibly opened the seal and let out one of these hostile entities who come to be Charles. Reading many letters and talking to many locals, it appears that majority of people thought Eugene would just leave them all behind, going to the mainland to save himself after bringing the newcomer to deal with their monster problem. Little would they know, however, is that Eugene would indeed come back to the island and would die as a sacrifice to save his people. Another belief of the island locals is that Warren, the mine owner, alongside his goons, want to leave Charles be rather than assisting the island locals by killing it, which has given rise to many theories amongst the locals, with some believing Warren wants to take over the world.
Already, Warren, the mine boss, is keeping 3 monster eggs locked away. We're unsure why he wants to protect the eggs. If they hatch, they would surely turn into monstrous creatures like Charles. To prevent this, we need you to steal all 3 and use them to bait Charles so we can destroy him. One of the eggs is in the north mine. Here's the key to the entrance.
Even a little reads on how employees who worked for Warren bringing supplies to the island were unsure why he would invest in this island, where barely anything worth of excavation exists, especially with the experiences Warren has in mining and making a fortune out of it. Soon the protagonist comes across someone called Sasha, who tasks him with finding scattered drawings in a hillside, which seems to be haunted by a ghost, being one of the most terrifying missions. Sasha assumes the ghosts are the lost crew members of the island who were possibly killed by Charles, with their souls being trapped in the island, drawing horrifying imagery of Charles depicting how they were tormented and brutally killed by Charles, causing them to be trapped here to suffer every day. If the ghosts get close enough to the protagonist, ghastly and eerie sounds can be heard of people screaming, with the protagonist being kicked somewhere far away in the map, with the ghost seemingly not wanting to actually harm the archivist. This might be an indication that these tormented souls do not want another victim fall to the demonic Charles, hence why they try to push anyone getting too close away. Finding a specific drawing does indeed also show how these ghosts were crew members whose souls became trapped here. The protagonist in one of the missions then finally comes across the crazed goons who wear intimidating face masks in the shape of Charles, trying to instill fear in the hearts of anyone that they encounter. These individuals guard different parts of the map under Warren's orders and wield the shotgun, which they are not afraid to use against intruders. It seems that Warren is an experienced gold mining expert who commissioned work here to find gold, but to local surprise, they have never heard of this place being rich in gold, confused to why he has started work here. Sometime later, meeting a character known as Helen, she informs the protagonist that the locals had tried battling Charles many times before, but every time they managed to weaken Charles, he always retreated back to the wilderness to regain his health and recover before attacking again. She reveals that there are 3 unique eggs with shells harder than diamonds scattered around the island in 3 primary mines, eggs that are guarded by the armed goons of Warren, which Eugene told him about in the very beginning. Helen further explains placing these eggs in the central temple of the island will possibly provoke Charles into a mortal battle where he wouldn't run into the wilderness again and would fight to death. Therefore, Charles is somehow connected to these eggs, and placing them in the central temple will somehow send some sort of a signal that will lure Charles into the temple. Finding a letter written by Eugene in the southern mine, it reads how he was the team supervisor, who soon come across a cavern which seems to have been an ancient place with strange things in it. Eugene, being the excavation team supervisor, came across these strange things and informed about them, but it seems that Warren just wanted to hide the fact and continue on with his work. Later in the game, we learned that the strange things within this cavern were indications and traces of monstrous giant spiders existing since as long as known history, who were sealed away due to recession of earth or caves closing in. Warren Charles, who founded the Charles Mining Company, seemingly knew of the phenomenon taking place in the island island, hence why he commissioned the very risky mining operation to find the source of it all, stumbling upon something he could have never imagined. One of the characters the protagonist meets has been theorizing on a possible reason Warren has commissioned the works here and why he's protecting the eggs. He believes that Warren found hundreds of more eggs, just like the 3 scattered, which he ordered the miners to use in the central temple prism to extract the energy from. Just before the miners could extract the energy from all the eggs, he stopped them, telling them to leave the last 3. This individual named Greg has a theory that Warren possibly wants to use the eggs to grow more monstrous entities just like Charles to take over the world. Therefore, it's likely these eggs were originally giving rise to giant spiders, which were one of the major predators in food chain in the island, which even the local humans struggled to fight. But after years of battling them, they could trap them in the local caverns where they would go extinct, or at least that's what they thought would have happened, with a primitive drawing being seen on an ancient tablet with ancient ruins and temples being found, depicting how these humans have been battling for a long time. That's until Warren Charles came into the image, experimenting with these eggs and demonic creatures, making an abomination of a hybrid entity between train and gigantic spider. Warren seemingly was attracted to this island, knowing powerful mythical eggs exist in which he could use to extract immense amount of energy from. But after learning he could create powerful hostile entities, he decided to keep the last eggs and experiment with them to create powerful creatures which he could control to potentially rule the world. Or at least this is the theory that Greg has. Warren in fact has been also preventing anyone from leaving the island, disabling all the boats and lighthouses, as if trying to use the locals as food or test subjects for his horrendous experimental creatures to feast on. More scattered letters reveal that Warren asked the locals to bring their families to Arenarum so they wouldn't have any reason to leave anymore, with Warren keeping away any information of him excavating in the island from reaching the mainland. Possibly Warren did so in order to perform whatever inhuman and cruel experiment he wanted with the powerful discoveries that he made without anyone else's intervention. Keeping the locals within the island also secured the information from ever leaving to the mainland. Warren went so far as not paying his employees and miners in order not to produce any paperwork against his interest that cave-in and mining operation is under work, essentially making people work for free.
Pay you. You see, Mr. Warren never told anyone from the mainland about his mining operation here. He never even reported the cave-in. He hasn't paid us since then. Our living quarters are atrocious, and I'm far overqualified for the pay I'm supposed to receive. Top it all off, none of us miners ever received copies of our paperwork. But that doesn't affect my subordinates as much as someone with my status.
Managing to fight off Charles in a few occasions and collecting 2 of the eggs in highly guarded places which Warren has set up, stressing that no one should ever be able to get their hands on the eggs, even if it means killing them. The protagonist comes across a letter which expands on what the eggs are capable of. The letter, written by a crew member called Gale, he explains how during the life energy extraction of some of the previous eggs, Charles barged in and fought very hard as if trying to protect the eggs from being destroyed and used for their energy. While fighting, Charles doubled in size and became stronger as if he consumed the energy from the eggs. That's when Warren had the eggs and evacuated the people, as if seeming to be wanting to protect his employees for the very first time. Gale mentions how Greg's theory on Warren wanting to use the eggs for growing spider trains for world domination is completely ridiculous, as Warren didn't seem to have any control over Charles and seemingly wanted to protect his employees and stop Charles from becoming stronger. It all seems Warren simply was a greedy man who overlooked many red flags and risky situations to extract energy from these unknown and understudied ancient eggs. It seems that Charles was one of the offsprings in the eggs who accidentally was born, fusing with one of the trains, creating this monstrosity. The whole reason behind Warren stopping people from leaving the island seems to be that he wants to prevent the news of him extracting this dangerous energy reaching mainland, where he could potentially face trial for basic safety neglect, and much more. Of course, he also wanted to have all the extracted energy to himself without sharing or paying any tax. Gale explains the prism within the temple has the ability to destroy the eggs while also being able to extract their energy. If all 3 eggs are placed in it at the same time, a strong beam of energy shoots up which would lure Charles. But the catch is, Charles would be able to consume this energy and become even more powerful. Almost ready to face Charles, the protagonist meets the widowed Gertrude, who lost her late husband in a battle to get rid of Charles. He made an armor-piercing weapon in order to destroy Charles, but Warren's goons stole the barrels, rendering it useless. Gertrude guides the protagonist where he could find the barrels, asking him to do her one little favor and name the completed weapon Bob in memory of her late husband due to the bravery he showed. And that is why this weapon is called Bob.
You know, my late husband built a gun to help fight Charles, but Warren's goons stole the barrels and took him up to their camp. Bob was such a brave man, much braver than you, I bet. If you take what I have left of the gun and steal back those other parts, you can put it back together to use against Charles. Just do me one favor, will you? If you do end up using it, name it Bob, in memory of my honey.
Finally, the protagonist meets Paul, Eugene's son, who decides to stay in the island and join the fight to destroy Charles. Paul, disappointed, thinking his father abandoned them, taking shelter in the mainland, gets informed by the protagonist how he sacrificed himself and came back, which makes Paul see his father as a hero, giving him the boost in morale that is needed to fight such a monstrous entity. Paul asks the protagonist to rig the highest bridge with explosives where they can lure Charles and blow it up, killing it. After planting the sticky bombs, the archivist heads straight to the temple, where he tries to place all the eggs which he acquired. Just as the protagonist is about to place these eggs in the prism of the ancient temple built by people thousands of years ago, Warren Charles III himself shows up, including many of his goons pointing their guns at the protagonist, ordering him to stop from placing these eggs inside the prism, as this would be the end of them all.
You'll hurt far too many people if you follow through with whatever you're planning. No! You fool! You've doomed us all!
The protagonist quickly puts the final egg in, which creates a beam of energy going up to the sky, which summons Charles, who, as expected earlier, grows bigger and stronger, consuming the energy, who kills anyone in its way, including Warren Charles, who was the culprit of it all. In a final suspenseful battle with Charles not showing any sign of stopping, the protagonist manages to weaken Charles, luring him into the rigged bridge, where he gets blown into the sky and finally dying, with the island being saved, or at least that's what the locals would think. A post-credit scene reveals that, in fact, there are thousands of these eggs deep beneath the ground, scattered haphazardly in what seems to be ancient civilization tombs and ruins, with the eggs starting to shake, displaying how they are about to be hatched, giving birth to many more demonic spiders to come, just as bad as Charles. In summary, Warren Charles III, under the Charles Mining Company, commissioned a mining operation in the island of Aranerum, knowing that it contained something special despite many people advising him against it. In his search of finding the valuable resources, he finds hundreds, if not thousands, of strange-looking eggs, which he learns produce a measurable amount of energy, which could make him the richest man alive. Finding these eggs, Warren, not to risk losing his discovery, makes the families of the locals come to the island, sealing the island off from the mainland, getting rid of all paperwork of the operation so the mainland wouldn't learn about his discovery. He does so as the mainland could send engineers and health and safety inspectors to analyze the safety of their operation and what these unknown resources are. Of course, it was something Warren couldn't risk. During his operation, he witnesses a monstrous entity emerge, something he wouldn't dream of in his worst nightmares, learning that these eggs are the offsprings of gigantic monstrous spiders which can fuse with whatever is close to them, as Charles, the name given to the monstrous train spider, proved to be one of these entities fused with a train belonging to Warren Charles Mining Company. Warren tries desperately to avoid any news getting out so he could still keep onto his riches, disregarding everyone's safety, even going so far as shooting anyone dead who gets close to his last 3 remaining eggs. The locals grow angry and resentful of Warren's shady practices, deciding to fight against them to get rid of the monstrous Charles and leave the island, as they lost many of their friends, family members, and their safety. An archivist who looks for the biggest things to collect for his museum gets tapped by Eugene, a local in the island, to fight off Charles and take its corpse to mainland to showcase it in his museum in return of getting rid of this monster for the locals. In a final battle, he manages to do just that, not knowing that thousands of more eggs just like that still remain in the ruins and caverns under the ground, ready to hatch due to the unrest and stress they experienced from Warren's excavation. This means more entities like Charles will be born, consuming the energy from the other eggs, becoming truly unstoppable, having a reign of terror, bringing death and misery to everyone that they encounter. Their powers also seem not to be limited to this plane only, as ghosts of crew members who fell to Charles seem to have emerged, suffering every day, being trapped due to what happened to them. And that's it for this video, folks. I'm planning to make many more videos about Choo Choo Charles, so make sure to keep in tune for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your host Star, thanks for being here, and I will see you on the next one. Take care.